Ah, the year 2020 is now upon us. A year where I may gain 100,000 subscribers. A year where I may not even die alone. A grand year it could be, but I would say that's mainly because in 2020 I expect some pretty amazing Nintendo games for the Switch, and that's precisely what we're going to be talking about here today. My predictions and speculation about Nintendo, the Switch, the games, and all the directs in the year 2020. Welcome everyone, this is AndresRestart. So we're going to be talking about our predictions for the year 2020 for Nintendo, of course. But a couple things I want to point out. Firstly, these are my predictions. They could very well be wrong. In fact, I can guarantee you some of these will for sure be wrong. And if I were to sort of put a number out there in terms of how often I'm right or wrong, not that I've actually calculated it, I would say I'm wrong sometimes and I'm right other times. I was right about there being a Pokemon Direct 2 weeks after the Nintendo Direct, and this Pokemon game would have an open world area with roaming Pokemon. I talked about that months in advance, and I got that right, and that was Pokemon Sword and Shield. I also talked about how Banjo-Kazooie could be revealed at E3 like a year in advance for Smash Bros. So I got that right as well, but at the same time I get things wrong. Like I kept harping on Metroid Prime 4 coming out in 2018, and I was very wrong about that. I also thought Bayonetta 3 could come out in 2018, and I was wrong about that as well. So I'm just going to say I'm like 50-50, so definitely take my predictions with a grain of salt. This is more for fun, but some of the things I do talk about is based on some research, of course, and other things are just kind of shots in the dark based off my gut feeling. So, you know, take this all with a grain of salt. But with that all said, let's get started with my actual predictions. So I am thinking that there's going to be a decent amount of Nintendo Directs this year. I'm thinking that because mainly I see Nintendo sort of starting the year off with a major January Nintendo Direct. You see, we don't really know who the final character in the Fighters Pass is going to be for Super Smash Bros. And the deadline's coming up, which is February supposedly. So I am thinking that they will be revealing this character in January. We thought it would happen at the Game Awards. Since it didn't happen at the Game Awards, really the only option left is an early year Nintendo Direct, which kind of puts us in for January. Not to mention Tokyo Mirage Sessions comes out midway through January. So this sort of leads me to believe that there will be a Nintendo Direct early January, and there they will talk about Tokyo Mirage Sessions, give us a few more details on that game, but also reveal the final character in the Fighters Pass, and maybe also outline some other things about DLC that's coming out later in the year for Super Smash Bros. And of course, I think DLC will be involved with every Nintendo Direct all throughout the year in 2020, because we do know more DLC characters are on the way. Beyond that, what else do I expect from a January Nintendo Direct? Well, I'll have a more focused January Nintendo Direct video coming out later on, but I am thinking that a couple more announcements will happen. Currently, there's nothing slated for February. I do think there's probably going to be something in February. I'm not sure what yet. I do think it's possible that some sort of remaster or definitive edition, something along those lines, it's not a full-on new game, could be announced by Nintendo. We've seen that before where a game that isn't a full-on new game is announced maybe just a month or two in advance. So I am thinking that an early year January Nintendo Direct could reveal something that could be coming out in mid or late February. So I'm just going to put it out there. I've banked on this game coming out for so long, and I've gotten it wrong many times, but I do think it has to eventually happen. So one of these times when I predict this game, I will be right. And that game is Metroid Prime Trilogy. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we get a Metroid Prime Trilogy announced in this upcoming January Nintendo Direct. We will see. If it doesn't happen in a January Nintendo Direct, it really would kind of surprise me if we don't see it at all in 2020. But then again, Metroid has been sort of aloof for a while, but I am thinking at least something Metroid will happen this year. I feel really confident in at least saying that, either a 2D Metroid, or Metroid Prime Trilogy, or maybe even just a teaser trailer for Metroid Prime 4, although we may be a bit of a ways off, but we'll see. But anyways, going back to the January Nintendo Direct, I do definitely think Animal Crossing will get a feature there. It will be shown off a little bit more, but afterwards, closer to the release of Animal Crossing in March, there will be a major Animal Crossing Direct fully focusing on that game and giving us a whole flurry of details, of course. But moving on in the year, I'm thinking that there's definitely going to still be a Spring Nintendo Direct, even if there is going to be a January Nintendo Direct. Maybe it'll be a Nintendo Direct Mini. That's possible, but I'm going to go ahead and say that there will be another main Nintendo Direct in spring, maybe April or May. And in that Direct, it wouldn't surprise me if we maybe see No More Heroes 3 again, or perhaps Bravely Default 2, or Shin Megami Tensei 5, or even Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. It wouldn't surprise me if a couple of those games were showing off during this direct. All of these games we know to already be in development for the Nintendo Switch, and all of these games have already been confirmed for 2020, save for Shin Megami Tensei 5. And on the note of that game, while I don't know too much about this series, I do know it was announced back in January 2017. We're pretty much 3 years since it was already announced. So it wouldn't shock me if this game is finally shown off in the year 2020 in a Nintendo Direct, and maybe even comes out sometime in 2020, maybe halfway through 2020. So that would basically be about 3.5 years since it was announced, which isn't really a stretch at all. I think that could definitely happen. So I'm banking on Shin Megami Tensei 5 coming out in the year 2020, along with Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, Bravely Default 2, and No More Heroes 3, which are all confirmed, and I think at least 2 of these games will be featured and shown off in a spring Nintendo Direct. But what about new games? New IPs, new Nintendo published games to come out this year. If I just predict things that are already announced, that's not really that crazy of a prediction. I gotta try and get something, and for sure Nintendo will have some things that we don't know about yet announced in the year. So what will those be? Well, I have a couple ideas. Now, this one I've discussed before on the channel. I have a video focused on it, so if you want to check that out, I go into more detail as to why I believe this, or at least think that there's a good chance of it, and that's Nintendo Land 2, or some sort of variant of Nintendo Land. And I actually think Retro Studios has had a hand in developing this. Now, why do I say that? Again, I have a video focused on just that, but the gist of it is basically that artwork that Reggie sort of teased when he retired officially, behind that Mario statue, there was a character that no one's been able to figure out, or not officially figure out at least. The character, in my opinion, is Monita, or some sort of variant of Monita, the main sort of spokesperson character from Nintendo Land. So I am thinking that Retro Studios has repurposed that character in some way. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm betting it's some sort of variant of Nintendo Land, maybe a straight up sequel. So it wouldn't shock me if that game is announced sometime this year. A spring Nintendo Direct seems like a good time to announce a game like that. One more game that I'm going to kind of put out there is a game that's a franchise that Nintendo's had for a while, but it's been sort of underutilized. And I think it's about time Nintendo starts utilizing some of their other franchises that have gone unused, and on the Nintendo Switch there are so many games coming out just from Nintendo. I'm honestly expecting Nintendo to tap into most of their franchises that they've had at least relevant in the last 20 to 25 years. And one of those franchises includes Wave Race. And besides what I just mentioned, and I guess like a trademark that came out within the last couple of years, this is pretty much just a shot in the dark. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be Wave Race. Maybe it's F-Zero, and if it's F-Zero, I would cry tears of joy. I really would. I'd be so happy about that. I mean, I'd be hyped for Wave Race as well, or Kid Icarus. Those would all have me screaming and jumping for joy. I'm not exaggerating. I really would be that happy if any of these games were announced. I'm just guessing it's going to be Wave Race. Who knows? I guess we'll see once 2020 comes and maybe we see that spring Nintendo Direct. Now, going beyond that, obviously I do expect there to be an E3 Nintendo Direct. I expect maybe either Bravely Default 2 or No More Heroes or Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition to come out around the summertime. Maybe 2 or 3 of those games will come out around then. But during E3, I expect there to be some major reveals. What could they show off? Well, for sure, I'm really confident about this one. And when I say really confident, I mean maybe like 75% confident. And that's a full blowout reveal for Breath of the Wild 2. Why do I think Breath of the Wild 2 will get a full blowout reveal at E3? Well, last year, or technically this year still, E3 2019, they had the reveal for Breath of the Wild 2. Technically, it's just being called the sequel to Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. It's going to have a different name. It's not actually going to be called Breath of the Wild 2, but that's what we're calling it for now. I definitely think this game is going to be shown off. This game has been in development since 2017. It's a sequel. It's using the same engine. That was a story trailer we saw, which suggests the game is late into development, so I'm definitely thinking this game is right around the corner, and Nintendo's going to want to have a couple really big games to help compete with the next generation systems. And on the note of next generation systems, I do think Nintendo's going to have more hardware coming out this year. I don't think it's going to be revealed at E3, I think it's going to happen a little bit after E3, just kind of like this year with the Switch Lite, but I do think a Switch Pro will be announced. Will it be called the Switch Pro? I don't think so. I think it's going to be called something else. I said the Switch Mini would be called a Switch Lite, and I was right about that, by the way. It's another prediction I got right. I'm thinking the Switch Pro is going to be called maybe Switch Plus. I'm thinking Switch Plus kind of makes sense, because Nintendo's not going to straight up copy Sony. I feel like Plus is definitely indicative of still the Switch, but something that is an enhanced version of that. So I'm guessing Switch Plus. We'll see if I get it right. Fingers crossed. But anyway, these games that we're going to be seeing at E3, like Breath of the Wild 2, are going to take advantage of a more powerful Nintendo Switch. And Breath of the Wild 2 is going to be, I'm going to say, probably going to be the best looking game we've seen on the Nintendo Switch. It's going to really challenge our expectations for what a game could look like on the Nintendo Switch. I think it's going to break our expectations. I think it's going to look amazing. Now, the question is, will we see Breath of the Wild before E3? I feel like we could get another teaser before E3, so maybe we do see a teaser for Breath of the Wild in the Spring Nintendo Direct I was talking about earlier. We'll see, but definitely we will see Zelda again sometime this year, and I do expect it to come out holiday 2020. Now, what else could they show off during E3? Well, maybe Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition gets a full blowout during this time. Maybe it doesn't come out during the summer, maybe it comes out later into the year. Definitely a possibility. That's a big RPG from Nintendo. I'm really excited about it, so I could see it being more featured then. I also think it's probably about time for Bayonetta 3 to be shown off. Maybe it comes out around the September-October time in 2020, so it would definitely be shown off at E3. Bayonetta 3 was technically announced in 2017, the 2017 Game Awards. So if it comes out in 2020, late 2020, that would be almost 3 years after it was announced. I'm assuming it comes out around October, which would be 2 months shy of 3 years since it was announced December 2017. So I definitely think that's about enough time. I think the main reason we haven't seen too much from this game yet more has to do with Astral Chain, another game from Platinum Games. And they really want to show off that game, and I think that game is amazing. If you haven't played Astral Chain, definitely check it out. One of the better new IPs on the Nintendo Switch. But I think now that Astral Chain has come and gone, Bayonetta 3 will be taking the spotlight when it comes to Platinum Games' big effort on the Nintendo Switch. So I definitely expect the game to be shown off at some point this year. It would honestly shock me if we don't see it by E3 2020. Now there's one more game I could see maybe getting announced at E3, and that game is a sequel to Super Mario Odyssey. Super Mario Odyssey 2, or whatever it's going to be called. I think this game has been in the works. What's my proof? I don't have any hard proof, but I do have a dedicated video talking about all the possibilities and why it makes sense and the trends that suggest it. But mainly the reason I think this is going to happen is because similar to Super Mario Galaxy, Super Mario Odyssey is a very successful, incredible triumph, and there were a lot of ideas after Super Mario Galaxy that led to a sequel, and I think there's a very similar situation going on with Super Mario Odyssey. If you look at some of the concept art, they had a lot of ideas, and there were so many rumors and quote-unquote leaks about there being DLC, but none of that happened, and it was such a huge game by Nintendo. And if you look at every other huge game by Nintendo, pretty much all of them are getting DLC, save for Super Mario Odyssey, which I think is very weird. But perhaps the reason why is because they had so many great DLC ideas that they decided to just use all those great ideas, kind of like with Super Mario Galaxy 2 and also Breath of the Wild 2, that they just decided to make a whole new game. And that game's been in development for a while, and I think it could maybe even come out in 2020. Am I super confident about this? Not necessarily, because if you're paying attention to all the games I've talked about, if all these games were to come out in 2020, that would be an obscene amount of games. It really would be. Could it happen? Yes, but it wouldn't surprise me if a couple of these games don't make the cut. And actually, on the note of these games not making a cut, there's another game I have failed to bring up at this point, and it may have already been revealed before E3. Usually, Game Freak reveals their big Pokemon game before E3. I'm thinking there's a possibility there could be another Pokemon game coming out this year. It really could happen. I mean, in 2016, we got Sun and Moon. Then in 2017, we got Ultra Sun and Moon. Then in 2018, we got Pokemon Let's Go. And then 2019, we got Sword and Shield. They may very well come out with another Pokemon game in a row. I feel like it's about time for Game Freak to take a break. That's my honest opinion. But they may still be making more games. They may be set up in a way where they're coming out with a game pretty much annually, which is what they've done the last handful of years. And the kind of Pokemon game I'm expecting is a Pearl and Diamond remake. Now, why is that? Now, I don't know too much about this myself, which is why I'm not super confident about this prediction. I sort of say that for later on into the video. But apparently, there is a bit of merchandising that's coming out that is suggestive of Generation 4 stuff. And similar to when Let's Go was coming out, there was a lot of Kanto stuff, a lot of Pikachu and Eevee stuff. So maybe the merchandising is suggesting Pearl and Diamond Remix. This is typically how Pokemon Company tends to function. They have a lot of merchandising that leads up to the release of their big game, and then they have the anime and the movies and all that stuff centered around their game for that year. So it honestly wouldn't surprise me if there really is a lot of merchandising coming off of Pearl and Diamond or Generation 4, that we finally get our Pearl and Diamond remakes. I'm a little skeptical because it's possible that they do something with Let's Go instead, or it's possible that they finally take a break. I think it's about time. I honestly do. But based on what I've heard about the merchandising for Pokemon and Generation 4, it does seem like we may be getting Pearl and Diamond remakes next year in 2020. Maybe. I'll go ahead and link you guys to a video where someone who follows all of this, he talks about all of this in his video, so check it out if you want more information about this Generation 4 merchandising. So I think that there's a possibility for that, so that's why I'm bringing it up here. And one more thing I'm going to bring up before I bring this all to a close. Actually, two more things. I think there's going to be a September Nintendo Direct, as there pretty much is every year. But I think, going back to E3, there will be a teaser for a game that won't be coming out next year, but it will at least be teased. I think that game is Metroid Prime 4. I think finally we will get some sort of glimpse of the game at E3 2020, and I think it will be similar to the way Breath of the Wild 2 was shown off at E3 2019. If that happens, does that mean that Metroid Prime 4 could be a holiday 2021 title? I think so, honestly. I think that would make sense. If you look at when Metroid Prime 4 was delayed, or they restarted development, they announced that early 2019, and I'm betting that they probably waited a couple months before they went public with that restart, so maybe they started development sometime in the latter half of 2018, and if that's the case, that would give us about a 3-year development cycle between late 2018 to late 2021. A lot of major games can be made in 3 years, so I do think it is possible that Metroid Prime 4 could come out at that time. Not to mention, while they did restart development, I'm sure there's a lot of concepts and ideas that were already prepared, and perhaps there are some aspects that they may have used or recycled to expedite the development for Metroid Prime 4. I think that's possible. We don't have any proof of that at this point, so I'm not saying I'm super confident about Metroid Prime 4 coming out holiday 2021, and in turn us getting a teaser for it at E3 2020. But I think it's definitely a possibility, and not just like a small one, like a decent one, like 50-50. Like pretty much a lot of the things I sort of talk about and predict. At least that's the number I sort of guess. I actually don't know. But anyways, everyone, those are my thoughts and speculation and predictions on Nintendo in the year 2020. What do you guys think? What are you guys looking forward to? How was your year, and how excited are you for the year 2020? Let me know all of this in the comments below. That's all for now, everyone. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching.